Hey y'all, I am VictorE. I help provide insight to empower, and I wanted to talk about today, in part, this feeling that I get every now and then. Before it used to be really bad, before I learned to start sitting with discomfort. And really, more than anything, this video is about what to do with the feeling of boredom. It has to do with escapism, video games, cigarettes, coffee even. I still have, I got my cup right here, I got a coffee. I'm still in it. But every now and then, there's this feeling that comes around. And part of what helps me is to identify where I feel that feeling. So for me, that's in the jaw and the neck area and back of the head type stuff. Why I bring this up, or why I feel this is important to bring up or valuable to bring up, is because that feeling, before I learned how to process it, how to sit with it, was the feeling, the urge to commit suicide. And I have an attempt, under my belt from 2014, where I actually attempted suicide. I got scars. If you see that, that's one of the scars that I made into a tattoo. But it was very deep frustration. And why I bring up escapism, suicide being, for me at least, how I understand it or have come to understand it, is tangential to escapism, is not wanting to be here, so wanting to punch out, as I like to say. And boredom, the way I've come to understand it is that I want to escape boredom, discomfort, because that's what I've come to that's the filter that I have over my reality, my experience, the way I see the world right now, let's say. As of now, that filter, the view has cleared up a lot. A lot. Why? Because I learned how to sit with discomfort. I learned how to sit with the feeling of boredom, that feeling that we label or have learned to label as boredom, right? Which to me is just resistance. It's resistance to it's resistance to accepting the moment as it is. Discomfort, boredom for me is discomfort, maybe even a different type of anxiety, but really at a deeper level, it's just resistance to the moment. And what this, I would say, insight yields is okay, well, if we can reframe it, learn that this is just resistance to the moment, this boredom, this anxiety, this fear is, now that we know it's there, we can shift. And with that shift comes a new perspective. So it's not just that we're shifting away from something, but we're shifting also to something else. So if you deal with depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, it's really, I feel, important to acknowledge how much of a trap it is to feel like you're the one thinking those thoughts or feeling those feelings. If you get swept away into those thoughts of this place sucks, it's setting us up to fail, or it's just a really shitty, unjust place to be in. That is also true, but that's not what to focus on, right? The part to focus on is how can you make your life better? How can you carve out your little heaven on earth? during your time here, because those are our options, like hell, heaven, limbo. If you're like, you may not even know it, but like you're creating your reality, your experience based on the underlying beliefs. So if all I want to do is escape or resist being, accepting the moment as it is, that is the formula for creating your hell on earth. That is how to create your hell on earth. Now, the tricky thing here, I think the thing that fucked me up most in learning to shift away from that is how much the body remembers and therefore expects and even kind of wants the same experiences. There's safety and security in that, right? The devil you know. When I was shifting out of, my own personal hell into limbo, and now like manifesting more of like the experiences that I love, that bring me joy, there were a lot of times where my body, let's say, was filtering out the old shit. There was no reason to feel so miserable or resentful or like contemptuous, but that's what was living in my body. And still, like, there's still a lot of that in my body that I'm filtering out. So like every now and then, now I'm a lot more proactive about it. I'll do this kind of breathing. That was just for me. I'm not going to show you the breathing. It's for another video. But it's basically just sighing. Like, I'll show you a little bit. It's like, even now, I feel kind of like I feel a buzz from doing that. It gets me a little bit high. And why I don't do drugs anymore is I don't fucking need them. But like, I would do that and find where in my body the anger, the fear lived, and I would just scream it out. Because there's a really great book called The Body Keeps a Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, and the book goes into like how when we go through traumatic experiences, our body stores that information. I mean, like more literally than just figuratively, or energetically, or emotionally, mentally. There's a lot of tension in the body, and like some of that is just from like working out and like life and day-to-day shit. But like some of that also formed during childhood. I mean, if you think about like a flinch, or anytime you haven't flinched because you watched like a video, or maybe saw like one of your siblings get hit or threatened, or like whatever, the body reacts because it's a natural extension of us, of like who we really are. But it also, like, in reacting, it's also acting, meaning like it's an action is like it's a repeated motion or behavior, and the more you repeat a motion, the more your body records that. Like if you, like, what's coming to mind right now is throwing a ball, or maybe like swinging a bat, or chopping food, or making a dish. The more you do it, the more it just becomes instinctual. So the more I thought about, like in my early development, the more I thought about how unsafe my environment was, the more I practiced thinking that, the more that took over my worldview, and that became my filter. That the world is just naturally, inherently unsafe, and therefore it is unsafe to have relationships, like with people, not just with like women. For me, it's unsafe to take risks. It's unsafe to, be myself or put myself out there, like this right now. But the more we get to know our filters, either because they come up because there's so much pressure built up, or because we call them up, like that breathing exercise, the more we do this, the more we're in really the more the juicy part of this is the more we get into the practice of feeling safe by going through that experience, right? If I call up my emotions to be processed out of me, well, then I get practice in dealing with negative or troublesome or difficult emotions. Therefore, when they come up, because they just come up in life, well, now I can handle those, manage those, navigate those difficult circumstances or experience with a lot more confidence. Why? Because I've accrued experience. So what does this have to do with escapism and boredom? Well, I would say my theory is that the feeling behind the drive behind wanting to escape or feeling boredom is, to me, like the emotional body, let's say, juicing, right? It's the word that comes to me in Spanish is exprimir, which is very close to experimentar, or to experience. So whenever there's, I don't really feel boredom nowadays, but whenever there's some anxiety or stress or something, it's, to me, the way I see it or frame it is that it's my body's way of juicing what was already there. That is, when I say juicing, I mean processing it out, getting out what was already stored in me. Because there are some who would say that or argue that venting, and it can go both ways, but venting is a form of practicing anger. And why would you want to vent? You gotta sublimate, or hit a punching bag or something. But I would argue that there is anger, fear, sadness, trauma that lives in our bodies that wants to get out. Not so that it can be practiced, but so that we can make more space, so that we can empty our cup. So that it can be filled with more joyful, with a potential for joyful experiences, depending on how we filter our experiences and what worldview we predominantly have. Yeah.